Good evening, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us for our monthly For the Record St. Albans Today show. Happy to have representatives from St. Albans City and St. Albans Town. And first time, Chief, I've had a chance to interview you out here, at least on this particular show. St. Albans Police Chief Gary Taylor, and I should say St. Albans Fire Chief Gary Taylor. Still have your two hats there.
I do, yeah.
Right,
Thank you.
impressive. And Brendan Deso, the Select Board Chairman in St. Albans Town. Thanks for jumping in, folks. Boy, Chief, seems like I mentioned this to a month ago when Mayor Tim Smith was guesting, which he usually does on the monthly show. Boy, it sounds like you folks have been busy. Just seems like watching, reading the Messenger, watching TV news. St. Albans has been maybe getting more than its share of stuff, but pretty busy times for you.
We're very busy.
Yeah.
We have more police officers now than we've ever had. We have 28 full-time officers.
Do you really?
And
wow. That sounds like that is most ever, huh?
Yeah, I think certainly it's the most since I've been here, and I'm starting year 15.
Really?
So we are very busy. But I would also tell you that when I talk to my counterparts around the state of Vermont,
yeah,
I think everybody in Vermont's busier now than they've been.
Yeah.
And we're all facing the same issues.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's a pretty short ride from Chittenden County to Franklin County, and sometimes we get a little overflow.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, I think of Montpelier and Barrie, two pretty similarly sized cities. Their PD numbers, are they similar? Do you know their numbers?
I don't know. I communicate with both of those people pretty regularly, particularly Tim Bombardier, the chief in Barrie City.
Former VSB.
Yeah, he has same kinds of problems and about the same extent as we do, and we do have a lot of similar demographics.
Yeah. Montpelier probably a little
but I don't know
different.
how many officers he has. I would tell you probably 20 or 22.
Yeah.
And Montpelier might be 16.
Really?
That's Anthony Fakos is the chief over there.
Boy, so that's so staffing. Are you fully staffed at this point?
I am fully staffed, but at the same time, I've got people in the police academy. So we put 5 in this
Drove through
time.
Pittsford yesterday. Didn't stop at the police academy. So often you have like 1 or 2 officers undergoing training.
Yeah, often we do. This time everybody was a little surprised when we had 5. I actually had 8 to put in, and they would only accept 5.
Wow. I know going back some years, St. Albans, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of the departments, losing people to departments with better pay. And I know the city kicked up their pay at that point. Is that not too much of an issue these days?
No, that's not really too much of an issue. We are very competitive pay-wise and benefit-wise because in the long run we spent more money because we would train up people who are good officers and then they would get hijacked, if you will, to Chittenden County, because they are so close to us.
Yeah.
But no, that's generally not one of the big issues behind people leaving. They relocate. Some of them just decide this isn't really what they want to do. They don't want to work nights and weekends. They don't want to be on call. This is not a real popular time for people to choose to be in law enforcement.
Boy, it sounds like it. Which has gotta be,
and it's difficult. We just went through an unfortunate experience. And we literally had to shut down our Facebook for a little bit.
Really? Because
of threats
really,
really nasty things being communicated. I was getting phone messages and emails.
Of course, the reference to the area woman who was struck by a then St. Albans police officer who's no longer, of course, with the force.
Right, and in fact was no longer with the police department. Even when that broke, the story, we had already dealt with that situation. And I would submit to you that we would have done the same exact thing, regardless of who the requester of the documents were, once we realized what had happened.
Nothing like a little video to go public, though, right?
That'll do it.
Yeah. Are you still getting some kind of fallout from that, or you think you're pretty much, I know you're changing policy after that incident?
Yeah, I'd like to think we're on the other side of it. I actually attended training last week in Pittsford at the Fire Academy. That was put on by the Vermont Chiefs of Police, and we talked about Act 56, which is the new requirement for reporting from one agency to another about employee conduct, and we talked about the paragraph we added to our they call it response to resistance. We don't call it use of force. It's a response resistance form and policy. And everybody's basically using the same one. It's one that was produced by VLCT, and everybody was looking for a copy of what we added. But it just was a lesson learned, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I regret that it ever happened, but unfortunately it did happen, and hopefully everybody takes a page out of that book and learns something and moves forward constructively.
Right. Again, this is a live show. Lisa, if you're watching us live, Wednesday, October 2nd. And Brendan, I know you've got a select board meeting coming up next Monday, October 7th. And one of the items on the agenda will be, whether to re-up for another year the contract with City PD for the town?
Yeah, we're hoping to start the discussion. It's been kicked around the police advisory board, and they recommended to us already that we take that option year and do the renewal. We really have until December 31st to give an answer, but I want to get that done and out of the way so we can focus on our budget. And we're going to need the chief's help to come in and talk about our budget for next year to make sure there's nothing that he needs in addition to what we're already contracted for. And I really, as a chairperson, didn't want the contract hanging over that discussion and making it awkward when we would probably arrive to the same conclusion a month or two down the road. So I'm going to try to get the board to vote to renew.
And again, this would be for 1 year, looking for a one year renewal.
And then next year
have you been doing 1 year to 1 year for a while? Or?
Well, this is a 5-year contract, and the last 2 years, correct me if I'm wrong, the last 2 years were option years. We took last year, and I'm hoping we take this year again. There's really no alternative to it. Yeah. Then next year, we may put out an RFP and have a bid, but it'll be a very, close conversation, and there's however many law enforcement agencies in the area, and I can say that I'm happy with how the city and its department has handled their police coverage in the last 2+ years that I've been on the select board. We've had the creation of the street crimes unit, which has been very effective in my eyes. The stats speak for themselves, and there's just not really another department in the area that I think can provide the same level of coverage and the same expertise and the same equipment. So, we'll be looking forward to having those conversations next year, and I think the police advisory board will help out a lot with that. But we are coming to the end of a 5-year agreement. Next year is year 5, and it'll be on everybody's radar. It'll be a topic of discussion for next year. But
Sounds like how do you think, Chief? Sounds like early on there were growing pains, for lack of a better term, but you feel it's gone pretty well?
Yeah, I do.
Certainly seems to make
We've been
make
policing
plenty
in
of
the
sense.
town since 2011 now,
Really?
almost a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I feel like, having lived here for 30 years and knowing the people that I know, and I lived in the town,
Yeah.
I feel like the people that I know are very pleased with the service they get. I'm proud of the service we provide, and we certainly hope to continue to provide that service.
Yeah. I know when Highgate, of course, 1 year contract with Highgate, there was some concern, I think maybe on the part of the town, folks I talked to about just wondering if you folks would be stretched a little thin, but you obviously are up for expanding. You got a 1 year contract. How's that going?
It's going really well, I think better than even anticipated.
Yeah.
I have a meeting to attend out there next week. But so far, I think they're very pleased with the transparency and the results. And we haven't stripped away any services from the town to the city. We've grown the police department. And I would submit to you that I would not be involved in providing police services if we were taking away from one place to give to another. I don't believe in that. I do feel that we're very transparent. Of all the police departments in Vermont, I would tell you we are the most transparent police department that I am aware of in the state. And I get accused of that regularly.
What was the attraction? What did you see as a benefit or attraction to going to Highgate? Already had the city and town, obviously, right. Together.
Well, I would tell you that moving forward, all of us are property taxpayers, and the cost of people have become, salary and benefits has become more and more. So anything you can do to offset those costs and reduce the burden to those who are paying the freight, I think is a good thing. We've been able to do that consistently and grow the department with no additional burden placed on the taxpayers in the city. And we do that by, leveraging what we think is a first-rate police department with first-rate service. And that's a way for us to help to offset those costs. It's like dispatching. We dispatch for 35 emergency entities,
Really?
And that helps defray the cost for the taxpayers in each of those communities, but specifically in St. Albans, who bears the brunt of that burden.
Funny you mentioned dispatch. I mentioned off air that I just took a trip with a friend to Lake George, my first time down there, watching Albany area news.
Yeah.
And the lead story 2 nights ago was they're really hurting for dispatchers. We've got dispatchers working, it sounded like the ones who are still there, 100 hours a week, but it sounds like they had a real crunch with just, not enough dispatchers. You doing okay finding enough dispatchers?
Yeah, we're doing good. Everybody knows Lieutenant Mo Lamoth. He just retired from the Vermont State Police. I hired him.
Yeah. Oh,
He's working
right?
full-time for me.
Really?
He's running the dispatch center in St. Albans.
Wow.
The dispatch center last year handled 112,000 calls.
Really?
In 1 year.
Wow.
Now, mind you, some of those calls are informational calls or directory calls, if you will. But I think they answered 20,000 911 calls, an additional 16,000 law enforcement calls, and 4,000 or 5,000 fire and rescue calls.
Are you covering outside of Franklin County too, or just in Grand Isle County, of course?
Yeah, we cover part of Westford,
Okay.
and we now provide dispatching services to Milton, to the police, fire, and rescue
Okay.
there.
Wow.
Trying to think.
Interesting.
The islands were with us for a while, and
Yeah.
then they aren't.
Oh, really?
But there's conversations going on now.
Huh. Are you after, would you like more? Do you go after more dispatching business if you can get it, or are you pretty much at a peak at this point?
Well, I would tell you that we have spent a substantial amount of money, the city, growing our infrastructure, emergency communications infrastructure, and dispatching is becoming more of a problem, and it will become even greater problem in the future. The state police have been trying to get out of the dispatching business now for 6 years.
Wasn't there an issue in Derby? Didn't folks in Derby, I think, lose one of the regional dispatching places a while ago?
Right, and we'll see what the new commissioner does of public safety, but I can tell you that, I have been the chair of the 911 board. I was on the 911 board for 10 years, and I was the chair of the last 3. And we've had ongoing conversations with the commissioner of public safety about how they really don't have the resources to dispatch for the number of people they do. They'd like to dispatch for their own.
Yeah.
And maybe other state entities like Fish and Game or Parks Patrol or something like that. But so I do think that there's going to be opportunities for the city to grow the dispatch center, and that will defray costs for everybody. I've been doing law enforcement now for 44 years.
Have you really?
And
The thinking is, does retirement cross your mind, or not?
well, we
Gotta think it might.
we thought about it a couple of times,
Yeah.
And we'll see. But I still got a few good years left.
Nothing imminent.
Nothing imminent.
Well, that's a long career too.
But again, I think that consolidation, regionalization, those are very real things, and they won't happen because of politics, but they will happen because of economics.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more and more difficult. I just read a national magazine article that law enforcement is down 18% across the nation.
Really?
And the number of candidates are dwindling.
Yeah.
And I know that some
can
of
you can
the other
relate to that, I
agencies, and I know their numbers, but I won't share them because I feel like that's their business.
I mean, VSP, Vermont State Police, aren't they down? I don't know if you probably know exact numbers, but it seems like they're down a significant number of positions, I think.
They are.
Even at the St. Albans barracks and maybe all the other places too, or some of them.
Yeah, absolutely, that's true. And in fact, with the anticipated retirements next year, they might be in for a pretty long stretch.
Really?
And it's just very difficult to find people who want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And every day there's something new, I have a lot of young people who are very proud and very professional. And when all those threats were happening and people were sending the really awful emails, and making statements to officers on the street, they start to hang their head a little, and I have to remind them that that's one person, and that is not representative of who we are.
Did you lose?
Any of us.
Did you lose anybody because of that? Who just said, "I've had enough. I want to get into something else"?
I have two who are at least talking,
Really?
having that conversation.
In part because of
Because of that,
Really?
they just feel like
Wow.
they're not sure that they're ready for the next bump in the road.
Yeah, well, that's tough.
But certainly, you don't anticipate that. You don't plan on that happening.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it does happen.
Yeah. So how are things in the town, Brendan? How's Public Works Garage? How's that going?
Wow, it's going well. I
Yeah.
mean, you drive by there and the walls are up. I think they're working on the floor now.
Yeah.
Anticipating maybe a January move-in.
Really? Is that right? January?
Yeah, and our project manager was working. I haven't been updated in a couple weeks, but we were working at that point to get V-Trans to approve the bid package for the salt shed. And if we got that done early enough, we hope to get some earthwork going and get that salt shed built this year too.
Is construction started on the salt shed or not yet?
Not yet. So being that it was a separate V-Trans grant, you go through a totally different process. If you look at the site plans for the project as a whole, there's a demarcation point where literally it becomes a totally different project. That said, it moves a little slower. There's a lot more red tape. But our project manager's been very good about trying to get around it and working with the state, and they've worked with us. We think we could maybe get it out this year, maybe get that built this year.
Yeah.
But, we talk amongst ourselves as if we have to build it next year, we can leave a loader down at the old garage for a winter. We can, the truck drivers can load themselves. We can train them all how to run that equipment. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but it would help. So, everything's on schedule and on budget. Last time we were updated, so I couldn't be happier.
And the current site on the bay, is that getting some discussion? What to do with your the current PW site?
We're going into October. Usually we do our budget meetings in January and wrap it up right around the end of January and put a number down for an article for town meeting day. This year, the clerk and the manager wanted to move that up to October and really give people time to sink their teeth into it and go through it and not feel rushed. So that's what we're doing in October. We're meeting every week for either a regular meeting or a budget meeting, and then we're going to have to work in a meeting for the town hall relocation project that we're working on to give us some guidance there.
Any news to report on that front? That's obviously big issue. We have our first call. Let's grab it. Go ahead, caller. You're on.
Notification. Hi. This call is from the Department of Social Security Administration.
I think that wasn't a call for much as I love to talk to the Social Security folks. Anyway, but this is a live show, folks. So for any legit calls, love to hear from you. Our number again, 528-5315. 528-5315. Sorry, cut you off there. So again, the new municipal building.
So we had our project manager from the DPW garage. We said we don't know if we want to renovate the building we're in now. I say I don't want to do it because it doesn't make sense.
I mean, you certainly don't think that's a good way to go.
Personally,
it's too much money.
But there are a lot of people
Yeah.
who at least want to know what that might cost.
Okay.
And we were able to get that answer at a relatively cheap cost, to us. So for $2,400 lump sum, this manager, who was an estimator for a lot of big name construction firms for a lot of years, and has done a really good job on the DPW relocation project. He's gone, and he's toured a building that we walked through as a committee that we thought about buying. And he is looking at some vacant lots and basically giving us a rough number on what it might cost to build something new. And he's managed other municipal projects before, so he kind of has an idea on what a town hall for a New England community needs to look like and feel like and how many square feet he needs. And we actually have a study from a few years ago that he's got a copy of to look at, and he's meeting with different department heads to adjust their needs to make sure everything's current. And he's going to give us basically 3 rough numbers. Renovate where you are and stay, move and build something completely new, or buy this building that you're looking at. And we're going to take those numbers, and that's really going to guide us from there on out. And then hopefully we'll either come up with, the only 2 solutions that I really want to look at personally are moving and building brand new or buying an existing building somewhere if it's cost effective. So
we're talking one building in particular, or any building that comes up? I think you may have mentioned that before.
Any building that comes up, but there was one building in particular that we sent him back through to evaluate equipment and depreciate a few things and give us a clear picture as to, equipment lifespans and where we would be at if we were to take the building over in a year or 2.
And when will you get that information?
He might be done. You know, Carrie has been out with some VLCT events, our town manager, so I'm looking to get in touch with her tomorrow and talk to her about it. But as soon as he's done, I'd like to call a meeting within 2 weeks, get everybody in the same room with him to be able to discuss this and dive into it. And I think from there, the numbers are really just going to guide us in one or two particular directions.
So that's your biggest issue. I mean, it sounds like Public Works Garage is going well. I mean, the municipal building, what to do about that? It sounds like the biggie for you at this point.
We need to get that done. You know, if I can't get this done, and you know, we've got such a good core group right now. I mean, we've got a good select board. We've got a great staff. If we can't get this done right now, by leveraging the local option tax or bonding or something, we have no debt. Our brand new public works facility was paid for in cash.
Yeah, courtesy of the local option sales tax revenue.
We need to get together and figure out what we're going to do about this town hall. It's decrepit. The maintenance has been neglected for years, and it's time to do something with it. That building deserves better than what it is right now. It's such a historic building to our town, and you know, of course, we're not talking about knocking it down and leaving it. You know, it should have a life after being a municipal office, but it doesn't work as a municipal office, and it's really just, it's not good. It's not a good situation to be in.
Chief, makes me think of current police headquarters. Probably not the best in the world, but looking forward to moving over to the CCV headquarters.
We're all pretty excited about it.
How's the downtown? I realize you're not the mayor here, but you certainly have a good feel for it. You probably have a feel for that, especially since it affects you. But the downtown project with is that not moving?
Everything seems to be going very well.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of the downtown. My wife jokes that I'm the goodwill ambassador for St. Albans.
I'm sure you are.
But this is we have a vibrant community, and now we have this core. I recall many years ago when I first moved up here on 8 o'clock at night, if you went to Main Street in St. Albans, it looked like a ghost town.
Pretty quiet.
And look at it now. I have to, usually at least once a week, my wife and I are out to dinner along Main Street.
Yeah.
And one business owner in particular, who will remain nameless, has said to me any number of times, "Chief, look at the parking here. There's no place to park." I said, "What a tough problem to have to deal with."
Yeah.
Maybe not a bad problem. Huh?
You know, I think that a lot of effort and energy has gone into revitalizing the community. It looks great, in my opinion. And you know, I'm friends with some legislators, some from our area and some not, who regularly comment on downtown. And all of them come to the different events. We have a lot of events in St. Albans town and city. One that jumps right out is a tractor parade. You know, people really think that's a great thing. And last year we had a bigger crowd for that than we did for the
I remember
Maple
last
Fest.
year. Well, it was very cold, but yeah, you're right. Big crowd. Most people hopefully come.
Bay Day, the Great Race. I mean, there are lots of activities going on in St. Albans. It really is a vibrant community.
Maple Fest seems to be hanging in there pretty well.
They just did the Afterglow concert. I know that they raised a significant amount of money. Good crowd, well behaved. Not the kind of crowd that you would see at the fair, for example, or maybe the beer tent at the fair, but it was very good. I'm very pleased about it.
Time frame for when are you hoping? Of course, there's some work that would need to be done on the CCV building on South Main Street, correct?
Yeah, there needs to be a retrofit.
Will that take a while?
I'm being told that we're probably 18 months out from being seriously involved in the retrofit. But we're anxious to get into new quarters. You know,
have you got enough? Boy, that sounds like your current quarters. Have you got enough room there now?
No, we don't. We joke about having bunk chairs.
Really?
The tallest guys get to sit the highest in the back row, or gals. But we're in 3,400 square feet of space. We run a regional dispatch center. You know, we have parking enforcement. We have support staff, and the officers. So that station is home to 47 people, and everybody's stepping on everybody all the time.
I mean, not to mention the fire department too, of course.
Right, and the fire department on the other side of the building. And we have water haulers in and out of there all the time, and of course we have prisoners, arrestees in and out of the building all the time.
Boy, that sounds like sounds tough. I know that.
I've been told now, I don't have any personal knowledge, but I've been told that it used to be a grain offices for a grain building or
No, right,
something
because
there.
Worthmore Grain used to be, I think, fairly close to there, but that means something to me.
I know they left some of their mice behind because
Really?
we chase them around.
Really interesting.
Need some
Boy,
station
so
cats.
so pretty tight, but it looks like you got to hang in there for a while longer, huh?
Yeah, the one thing that I'm really proud of the officers for and the dispatchers is they haven't made a big issue out of that.
Really?
You know, they've just gone out and done their job, done the best they can. And but we have had people who apply who see the building and decide that they're not interested.
Really, just because of the building even.
A lot to do with paramilitary organizations, if you will, police departments, fire department, has to do with a sense of pride.
Yeah, interesting.
You know, esprit de corps. So that's important to some people, but in my opinion, if that's the thing that drives you to work for somebody,
Yeah,
maybe that's not the most valuable trait that you need to have.
interesting. You mentioned 28 officers. How many are female?
I'd have to count them up. It's funny because I just updated my list today. I'm also doing veterans, to recognize them for upcoming Veterans Day. We have 16 employees who are military veterans.
Really?
Wow.
And I think of those 16, 12 are combat vets.
Wow.
Wow.
Let's see, I have, this is a list of officers.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
so I have 4 female officers.
Yeah. Hey, do you make an effort? Would you like to have a higher
Sure.
percentage? It sounds like you'll take any good officer you can get at this point, pretty much. Huh?
I'm very proud of one of the smallest officers on the department.
Yeah.
It has more courage and internal, fortitude maybe.
Metal, whatever.
Whatever you would call it.
Yeah.
Than some of the biggest officers who ever worked there. She's small.
Yeah.
But she has the heart of a lion, and she goes out there and does her job, and she's not. None of the officers, to my estimation, are overly military. They're not like that. We're a community policing department. That's what I want people to do. If you see some of the posts that have happened on Facebook, our Facebook page, they're officers tossing footballs at football games, and
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like the annual night out was another good.
It was a
another good
great
night, huh?
success, and I want the officers to be part of the community. I want people to feel that they're approachable.
Yeah. Have you got a sense of that? Do you feel, Brendan? Do you think
definitely.
a lot of people are pretty comfortable with police officers?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you've got people, mostly my age, that are keyboard warriors, have grown up with tablets and phones and laptops in their hands since we were, in middle school, and they see things happen like that. And unfortunately, it's that the chief talked about earlier, and they get on their keyboards and they send nasty messages and they say things that they probably don't mean at heart because they're trying to be funny or whatever their issue is. But I think when you look at the actual community, like who makes up St. Albans, and if you were to take a poll of, would you feel safe if you were pulled over by an SAPD officer on your ride home from work or the grocery store? Would you feel safe if you were out walking your dog and an SAPD cruiser pulled up next to you? Resoundingly, they're going to say yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to talk to that officer. There are people that could live down the street 2 or 3 doors down. So, like the chief says, he's trying to run a community policing organization, and you can tell. I mean, he or Ben Kuchar are at our select board meetings often. They provide updates. If one of our board members has a question that maybe they're not prepared for, we always get an answer right back. They're the same way with people. I have had an incident ongoing for a couple of years with my neighbor, and every once in a while I have to call to get a police report to document some damage. And you call down, the cops come, they're professional, they're looking to help you. I mean, the chief runs a good organization. They're always there to help, and it's it's all situational, and they're always on their toes 24/7, but they do an excellent job. And please tell whoever your 2 officers are that are a little worried about that next bump, even if it comes, so be it. I mean, stuff happens.
Yeah, it does. Again, our number 528-5315, folks. If you want to check in, Chief, the street crimes unit's been in place for what, couple 3 years?
It's only been a little less than 2 years. We're in our
less than
second
2.
year now, and I'm really pleased to tell you that
You feel it's made its mark?
I updated my numbers today,
Right.
so I know this is true.
Right.
it is consistently 2 full-time officers who get some part-time oversight supervision.
Yeah.
And, we help them out to the extent that we can. But in a year and a half, they've made 179 arrests.
Wow.
They've assisted patrol or backed them up 800 times. They've done 337 motor vehicle stops. They've issued 141 traffic tickets, 241 warnings. They've conducted surveillance on 146 different occasions.
Yeah.
They've applied for, and executed search warrants 48 times. And we've had 6 cases adopted by the U.S. Attorney's Office and prosecuted federally.
Wow.
And ironically, the seizures, they have seized 4.90 pounds of cocaine. I have to look at that every time. Pounds. I was in the drug task force, and we never saw those sort of weights.
Really?
And most of that cocaine is crack. And they've gotten some meth, and they've gotten 4,440 bags of heroin, dozens of assorted pills. They seized $19,804 in currency associated with that stuff, and 2 handguns. Those things all work well for us. I today met with the new station commander for St. Albans.
Yeah, who's the new commander?
It's Jerry. His last name
Sorry to put
is.
you.
Yeah,
I
partly.
read the story in the Messenger, but.
But he came to talk to me about partnering with the Street Crimes Unit. Tenny Bombardier from Barrie sent a sergeant over who spent a week with the guys.
Really?
He went back and replicated it, and he jokes with me all the time about how he tells people, I stole this from St. Albans. I know that Rutland, Brian Kilkillen down there, has talked about replicating it. I think that it is being replicated. Because I didn't really create this. What I did is I
Did
searched.
anybody else in Vermont have it before you guys?
No.
Really?
No, I don't think so. I searched around the country. You can do that with the internet. And I looked at best practices. And, we continue to have about 3 dozen overdoses a year in St. Albans Town and St. Albans City. And last year, 20 of those resulted in a full cardiac arrest.
Really?
And
and
we administered Nalfon, naloxone, and only 5 of those were unable to be revived. I know that 5 is too many. It's too many to lose. But in 5 situations, we were unable to revive those individuals. Before I came here today, they had another incident. They found an individual who had OD'd in the cemetery near the town school.
Just earlier today?
Today, yes.
Wow.
And they were able to administer Nalfon and naloxone and bring him back, revive him. But that is about a 2-year run now. It looks like we had 35 overdoses the year before last. It's happening with great regularity. And we have to do something. These are our kids, our neighbors' kids, our friends. People say to me, I don't know why you do this. They should get one time that you revive them. And I'm saying, yeah, really? Because what happens when I bump into their father and I know him? And he says, you could have saved my kid if you'd have done that. I'm never going to be the one that makes a decision that we're not going to try.
Right.
And we were one of the first departments in the state to carry naloxone.
Really?
And when we were paying $5,000 a year to equip the cruisers with it, now we get it for free from the health department. But we do have a problem with this opioid crisis. I think everybody has come to the point where they realize you can't arrest your way out of this. It's going to be a combination of things. And this is what I really like about the Street Crimes Unit. People say, well, a lot of those people you're getting aren't big drug dealers. I don't care. They all go to court. And the first thing that happens when they go to court is they have to be screened.
Right.
And if they have a drug problem, they're going to be referred to rehabilitation or some type of program, substance abuse program, that I'm optimistic might help. And I'm hoping that there might even be already some anecdotal stories out there about people who get help. Because the first reaction is to get mad.
Right.
The second reaction of the whole family is to wrap their arms around that person and say, I have noticed you've been a lot different lately, or you've been acting different lately, and we're going to do what we got to do to help you get through this, but we're going to get help.
Is it the treatment center on South Main Street? Does that figure into this? Is that?
It's a huge part of this. I think we have to be able to treat these people. You've not heard any complaints from me about that location.
Yeah, I've heard.
There are
I've heard
lots of people
Yeah.
coming and going from there all the time.
Yeah.
And we just have to accept the fact that it's like an emergency room. If you have an emergency room, people who are injured are going to go there.
Right.
Or sick.
Right.
So we should accept that about it.
Yeah. The opioid crisis, Brendan, can you kind of relate to this just with some people you know, or?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely, huh?
Some best friends from 7th grade on
Really?
the school bus.
Is that right?
In and out of rehab 3 times in high school alone. I mean, it's scary. It's scary when your friends are experimenting with drugs that they know nothing about, and then you throw in the factor that it could be at any point in time laced with fentanyl. Any point in time, whether it's pot, cocaine, anything. You think, oh, this is a drug that people use all the time. Cocaine isn't a big deal. People use it in movies all the time. Pot, it's legal, so I can smoke it. It's no big deal. I'll buy it from somebody I know. And you never know if that one time you experiment with something you don't know anything about, it could kill you.
Yeah.
That to me is scary. I have a feeling that, knock on wood, I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that we'll bury some friends in my lifetime from overdoses that, some of these 5 incidents a year that we can't revive people. But you look at, like, when we went from the sheriff to SAPD.
Yeah.
And I remember those kitchen table discussions with my grandparents at the time, talking about how can they provide the same level of coverage? How can they come out of the city into the town? The sheriff's been doing this for a long time. This street crimes unit is not an off-the-wall idea, but it was something that was, outside the box. And it's been effective. Yeah, it's been effective. I mean, so whatever the town can do to provide its citizens with a higher level of coverage and a more effective level of coverage, we should do that. The street crimes unit was a good example. It was thrown together kind of at the last minute at the beginning of a budget cycle. We found money in emergency reserves to be able to fund its startup. I have no regrets as somebody who's voted for it consistently. But yeah, you get back to the personal note, like the chief says, you'll run into people in the grocery store and you just never know. I mean, I remember working at Price Chopper when Operation Northern Lights came down. There were 32 arrests in St. Albans for cocaine, meth, you name it. And there was a roster printed in the messenger of different faces, and you could pick them out. I went to school with that one. That one's my my grandfather's friend's son. You can pick them out. People that you know. And you work as a cashier at Price Chopper, and you've got people coming in with hoods pulled halfway over their faces. They can't look up at the lights. They're users whose supply was temporarily cut off. And you'd be surprised in like a 6-hour shift, you see 30 people in the same boat, and you know half of them. And it's such a deep-rooted problem in our community. We talk about spending $110,000 a year on a street crimes unit and $750,000 on police force coverage. Well, maybe that's not enough. What if your property tax bill goes up $100 a year? If that puts somebody in line that could save your son's best friend from an overdose, is it worth it to you? So I guess we just have to keep having these discussions, and I'm grateful that the chief's willing to, get on the internet and look around the country and he's not afraid to bring new ideas, and more new ideas could come up next year as part of our contract discussion. Yeah. And
Chief, opioid crisis, is it getting worse still? Do you feel like you're...
Well, I'm not sure it's getting worse. It's not getting dramatically better anyway. Really. We're seeing more crack cocaine than we've ever seen.
Really?
For a while, heroin really was the most prevalent drug.
And now crack cocaine.
Now it's crack cocaine. And it comes from the inner cities. Yeah. Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody who can buy it cheap, where they come from, and they come up here. And, one of the old tricks, which is not used anywhere as near as much anymore, is that they'd show up at a local hotel, motel, and they would be in business until they're out of dope. And then they'd leave and go back home, and they'd do it again next month or the month after. The problem is that these people recognize that there is profit to be made. And the example that I would give you is a well-connected individual in Holyoke or Springfield can probably buy a bag of heroin for as little as $4.
Is that right? And buy it very easily.
That same bag is worth $25 in Chittenden County, and it's worth $35 in Franklin County.
Really? Wow.
And when we intercept them, it's never a bag or two. It's hundreds and sometimes thousands of bags.
Oh.
I just barely noticed that they got 280 bags of I guess it was heroin 3 nights ago. I think it was heroin. But
Is it locally?
It was coming. Yeah, they made the arrest on the road. You know, a lot of the interdiction that happens in motor vehicles.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's only logical. We don't have a lot of public transportation systems because we're so rural and so spread out.
Right.
So the drugs and the money come in by motor vehicle.
Right.
Or leave by motor vehicle. You know, I've heard estimates from DEA that are shocking about the amount of money that might be moving up and down the interstate.
Right.
But, you know, having worked historical drug cases for 4 years, you could work months and months to try to make a case against somebody, and a cop on a motor vehicle stop could get more dope than you could get because it's like fishing with a net. If you're stopping cars, the drugs are being hauled in cars.
Well, then you never know. I mean, I went on a ride-along with the street crimes unit last February or March, sometime in there, and the officer, Corporal Cody, I think it was, he was telling me a story where a street crimes unit officer arrested a woman on Federal Street that had a good job, but she had a crack cocaine problem. She had a possession charge that she was faced with, and they worked out a deal where that one stop led to the arrest of a pretty large dealer in our area. So it's really the chief's idea of fishing with a net. You catch big fish, you catch little fish. That resonates really well with us because it's true and it makes good common sense, and it's been very effective. So when we talk about in the budget about the street crimes unit, I'm sure it'll come up. You know, we'll be prepared with data to be able to show its effectiveness.
And yeah, you know, this is what I would like to think. I would like to think anybody who knows me would agree that I'm fairly progressive, and I try to think outside of the box. I said when we started this, if it didn't work, we wouldn't try to continue it. We weren't going to pump life into it. But if it worked, we should do it. And it works. And I think we should do it as long as it works.
Right.
I don't think we should spend good money after bad. I think that there are occasions when you think something and you try it and it doesn't work, and everybody has to be willing to say, okay, it didn't work. Right. At least it didn't work the way we wanted it to. But when you think about it, part of the problem before was these officers handled 12,000 calls a year between the town and the city, approximately. So between those calls, you tell them you got to watch for drug dealing and people that look like they might be high and, you know, or committing a crime or involved in that sort of activity. And so, for example, the big event that happened was the drug deal that started in the park and ride on 104 that turned into a chase down into the city and a shooting down at the church and then flight to Swanton. If you look at that, you realize, okay, people, that's close to the interstate, people might be congregating there to in fact engage in criminal activity. So you ask the officers between calls to watch that parking lot. Well, they get there and 2 minutes after they're there, they get dispatched to a domestic or they get dispatched to vandalism.
Really?
And they leave. So the street crimes unit guys don't have to leave.
Let's see if we have a legit call this time around. Hey, caller, go ahead. You're on, for the record, St. Albans today.
Good afternoon. I'm just calling to say that as far as to St. Albans goes in the police department, they are doing very, very well. And today, believe me, it takes a lot of courage to be a police officer today. You don't know what you're going to run into when you get to a domestic problem. I say right now, it takes a lot to be a police officer and all what you have to go through. As I say, I think the city, Gary, and the department are doing very well. You know, they got the town of St. Albans. They've got Highgate. And again, today, it's hard to run with the full force and the proper training that you have to go through. And as I say, my hats are off to Gary and this department for doing such a good job. And, you know, on the other side of the coin, too, St. Albans is doing well. give you an example. New businesses coming in down on Lake Street where bakery just opened up, a coffee shop. And right next door where this other shop, store's been empty for years, there's a permit going in for there. Also, where the other side of Twinks, first the building is empty, there's a permit for a business going in there. And also, as I say, there's 3-4 other businesses that are coming to St. Albans to open up. And again, St. Albans is on the move. And again, as I say, I think Gary's doing a tremendous job. Him and his force, and what they're going through there today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, caller. Thanks for calling. Thank you. Was Roger Langevin, of course, now the Franklin County Sheriff, was he replaced as an SRO at SATEC, Chief? Is there a...
Yeah, we actually have 3 SROs now.
Oh,
Catherine Hansen is the SRO at SATEC.
And,
Paul Moritz is the SRO at BFA, and Paul Talley is the SRO at the city school.
is that the first SRO at the city school?
It is. We started
Really?
not mid, 2/3 of the way through the year last year. We started an SRO program there.
Huh.
And we're providing some assistance to Fairfield, too. They're part of the Maple Run Supervisory District.
Yeah. You feel that's a valuable position?
Tremendously valuable.
Tremendously valuable.
We all saw what happened in Parkland.
Yeah.
I mean, and part of the people have complained to me that we have too many cruisers. And I explained to them, well, we have 3 SROs, and they each need a car.
Yeah.
And that car needs to be seen at the school every day.
Yeah.
And part of the deterrent effect of having an SRO there is making sure people know the police are there and they are paying attention and watching.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have kept a few extra cars, but they're necessary. Yeah. And the truth is, the school system has done a really good job of reimbursing the community for costs of that. Yeah. I think it's one of the most effective programs we do.
What's the typical day, if there is such a thing, for a school resource officer?
It depends which school you're at.
Yeah.
Certainly, I can tell you that there's no such thing as a typical day at the high school.
Yeah.
And there's probably, it goes from disciplinary issues to small criminal activity. Yeah. One of the best things we ever did, and we were one of the first in the United States to do this, is we put a passive alert drug dog, into a school full time. And now Lieutenant Jason Weatherby was the SRO. And I got calls from Washington, D.C. when we put in for that grant, asking if I was really going to put that dog in the school every day. And I said, yes, we are. There was a tremendous issue or perception issue that some kids got treated differently than other kids. And one of the things that we felt we could do to address that is make the playing field more level. And ironically, I could tell you some stories anecdotally, and one of them in particular about a young man who had drugs, who saw the dog in the officer, turned around and took off on a dead run and was obviously stopped and had 25 bags, I think, of marijuana with him that he was going to sell to school, which we took out of circulation immediately. And that's a pretty strong message to the rest of the school. And 98% of those kids are good kids.
And the dog's in what school?
The dog was, when we got the grant, that's where the dog was. The dog is not in the school anymore, though we do bring him in all the time.
Really?
That's Wyatt, who is responsible for one of the largest seizures that ever occurred by a dog in Vermont.
Really?
And now we have a second dog, Ringo, who's now taking Wyatt's place. Ringo's with Sergeant Mike Malinowski, and he has some good finds too.
Yeah.
They're black labs. They're passive alert, so they don't bite. They don't claw at or chew at anything. They just sit down.
Yeah.
Really?
When they detect drugs, they sit down.
I remember being at SATEC going into BFA was at the tail end of that program, 2011, and my junior year was Corporal Talley's first year as an SRO up there, and I remember putting him through his paces with different things, but it's a different feeling when you're a kid and you go on the internet and it seems like every day there's a school shooting somewhere, and there's always thoughts and prayers and flags at half-mast, and you don't feel safe all the time. But when you go to school and you see a cruiser sitting in with your teachers and there's a full-dressed officer right there, armed, just as a student, to have that little bit of support can go a long way in getting through your day. So that's, that
Yeah,
program's
I
been
agree with
incredibly
you.
effective.
Well, the other thing I would tell you, and I know this sounds a little bit like I'm bragging, and I am, is Walter Krull, who runs AmCare, and myself.
Many years for
A couple
Walter
of years
and-
ago, I had come back from a police conference training seminar and decided that it was time to start educating everybody about what to do if they find themselves caught in an active shooter incident or some type of high trauma incident, because people feel helpless. We put together 3 tried and true programs, and we put them under the heading of a program called Survive Vermont. And it's the first part of the program is if you see something, say something, which is a federal initiative. And the second part of the program is Run, Hide, Fight. And it's consistent with what we teach our children about trick or treat or anytime, stranger danger. Get away from them. If you can get away, get away. It's much harder to hit a moving target than it is a stationary target. And even if you can hit the target, there's a chance that you're not going to be able to inflict a mortal injury. And the last part of it is Stop the Bleed. And that really was a White House initiative that came about on the heels of the Orlando, Florida shooting incident and just prior to Las Vegas. But basically, what we discovered is people are not going to leave because a shooting has occurred, because they have gone there with other people that they love and care about. And if they've been injured, they're going to stay. So the theory is, if you're going to stay, you need to know what to do. Because most people who die in a trauma situation like that die from loss of blood. And it only takes 3 to 5 minutes to go from injured to death if it's an arterial bleed. So if you can stop it, if you look at the things that happen in Las Vegas, people tore the sleeves off their shirt and made homemade tourniquets. All my officers now carry tourniquets. We do tourniquet training with all of the officers. We've now done the Survive Vermont program more than 24 times all across the state of Vermont. And this year, I'm proud to say that Vermont Emergency Management put in for a grant and got it. And Survive Vermont is going to be the new program that will be supported by the governor's office in the state of Vermont that will be pushed out across the state of Vermont.
So do all the officers have some EMT training?
What they have is tactical medical training. We call it tactical medical training. But, and what I tell people all the time is, if you can give people options, we can't prevent everything from happening, and we probably can't stop a certain amount of it. But if we could give you options so that if something happened when you were at the movie theater, like what happened in Aurora, or at the El Paso, Texas at the mall, you had a chance to, first off, participate in the decision-making of what you're going to do. And secondly, you can pick. So Run, Hide, Fight is really pretty easy. And it's not a ladder, it's a continuum. So depending on where you are in the incident, you may not have the option of running. But nonetheless, you may be able to do something until you can do something else. I'm really proud of that. We take very seriously our responsibility for preventing those sort of things and being prepared to respond to those sort of things. And it happens everywhere now. It's not just the big cities. It happens in rural places. Even the church community has gotten together, and we've worked with them to establish emergency response plans. I met with a daycare manager yesterday, and they're developing emergency plans. We've met with the hospital and with the large employers. We have plans for all the schools. Now, I know that the best plans of mice and men, get laid bare immediately, but having a plan gives you some degree of confidence going into something.
Interesting. Down to about 6 minutes or so. Brendan, you want to touch on a few other things in the town? Some sidewalk issue getting some attention?
Yeah, so we voted unanimously to approve spending a little under $10,000 to construct about 140 feet of sidewalk at the top of Fairfield Street. Really does a good job of connecting Hawks Nest into the city sidewalk network, allows elderly folks the ability to not have to walk right up against a guardrail. So that's our second sidewalk project of the year. We also had that as a pretty high-ranking priority in our sidewalk plan. We're moving in the right direction, and we're working on a capital plan right now. And at the end of that capital plan, it has a pretty expensive piece of equipment to maintain these sidewalks in the winter. So we're thinking ahead and into the future. You know, this isn't anything that'll go away when hopefully, you know, we don't see a big board change over the next 2-3 years and revert back to where we were, you know, 2 or 3 years ago with not wanting to even ask for sidewalks to be built in the town. So, you know, the big development that came out of one of our recent select board meetings is we asked the Planning Commission to look at the local option tax revenue and take about 60% of it and start to leverage it for different purposes. We know that we have expensive Department of Public Works equipment coming up to buy. We know that we need sidewalks and matching funds for grants for sidewalks. We know that we have stormwater obligations. We know that we need a new town hall. How can we get the best bang out of that local option tax money while still keeping our property taxes as low as possible?
And the town, how much is the town taking in roughly a year from that?
Last couple of years, about $850,000.
A year.
Right.
It's decent hunk of money.
So if we could take $600,000 or $500,000 and decide that $100,000 will be sidewalk matching funds, you know, $100,000 will go towards Department of Public Works equipment acquisition, $100,000 will go towards debt service of a town hall, whatever it ends up being. Let's figure that out. Let's get a 10-year plan together. Let's bring it to the voters. Let's let them make the final decision, and then let's start building things that we need to attract people to our area. You know, that caller that wasn't from the Social Security Administration had a very good point. You know, St. Albans is doing really well. We're attracting people from Chittenden County because our taxes are lower and our community is just as, if not more vibrant than anything in Chittenden County. If we want to continue that, we have to start looking at, you know, how can we make the Bay better? You know, what can we do to connect the town into the city sidewalk network better? How do we make this growth center that we're in right now, Franklin Park West and Route 7 and the Walmart area, as it develops, how can we make that pedestrian friendly? Because it'll need to be.
Chief, with all the police talk, I have to remind myself, I'm talking to the fire chief here too.
Yeah.
With all what you're doing with the police, the fire department, fire chief gets some attention, I assume.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I'm very fortunate that I have a deputy chief who is responsible for operations, who does a great job. And we probably have a core group of 24 firefighters. We don't refer to them as volunteers anymore. They're all part-time and full-time. They all get paid when they respond. They all have the same training. We've been able to replace all of the apparatus with new apparatus. We've been able to replace the equipment. And a small example of that are air packs, you know, the old steel tanks, where we've now gone to fiberglass tanks. And an air pack system's about $7,000. We've been able to replace all of those. We have a beautiful ladder truck. It's a Quint, you know, with a 100-foot ladder on it. We are really the first call for St. Albans Town, and St. Albans Town is the first call for the city. We work well. We set our trucks up the same way. I would tell you that we're able to put anywhere from 20 to as many as 35 certified firefighters on the ground in a structure fire in the town or the city upon recall.
Yeah. Impressive.
So yeah, I'm really pleased, and we don't split hairs about whether we're in the city or we're in the town.
Well,
we don't do it in the police department. We don't do it in the fire department.
Our deputy chief is the same person. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's your assistant chief.
You can't go. The number 2 in both departments is the same person.
And I seem to be the only person who ever asked about a merger. It sounds like merger talk's gone away, but I guess what I hear, it sounds like the two departments are working well together.
Yeah, I'm not sure that sometimes, you know, the old saying about if it isn't broke, don't try to fix it.
That's what I had.
You know, one of the things that frustrates me every year about the legislature is it feels like they get on there determined that they're going to find something to fix.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have been better off to leave it alone.
No, definitely.
So I don't know the answer. I just don't want to be involved in the politics.
Yeah.
But I love the community, and when I think of St. Albans, I don't draw lines. There's no city, there's no town. It's St. Albans. We're all from the same area. Right. We're all friends and neighbors and relatives.
Yeah. I think on that optim, Brendan, you want a quick final word? I got 30 seconds left.
No, hey, thank you, Chief. Pleasure to be here as always, and look forward to the next one.
All right, thanks, Brendan. Chief, great to have you on the show. Thanks you very much for coming.
Thank you, Brendan, for all your support.
St. Albans Police and Fire Chief Gary Taylor, Brendan Deso, the Select Board Chairman in St. Albans Town. And thanks for watching us, folks. Thanks for the call we got. and our good friends of the Social Security Administration. And we'll be back next month for another For the Record St. Albans Today show. And thanks to my man Zach out there for doing all the hard work. Thanks for watching us here on Northwest Access TV. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. See ya.